Hello everyone, welcome to our first installment of the Sadness series. This time we're going to focus on what we call the Superwoman Syndrome. So this is something that people are pretty familiar with, but before we delve into our topic, we're going to start by introducing ourselves, and we'll start over here with our lovely co-host.
My name is Seneca Dunmore. I am a motivational speaker and college professor with Houston Community College. And so I got into motivational speaking kind of with my own personal story. I had some health challenges for years, and I was really embarrassed to tell everybody about it. I went through a series of depression and just low self-esteem and body image issues. And from there, once I began to talk about my issues and the depression and the health challenges that I was having, in front of the women's ministries, when I really started to open up about it and get into the motivational speaking. So I always tell everybody, my calling found me. I didn't find it. I wasn't looking for it. It was just something that I happened to stumble upon, and it's been the best thing ever. So that's kind of been my journey.
Hi, my name is Shannan Blount. I am an HR manager for Insperity. I'm actually a guest, and I'm excited about our topic of discussion today. I've also dealt with depression after losing my mom. And 4 months after that, I lost my grandmother. So I've had several bouts with it, and I can kind of relate to some of the things I think we're going to be talking about, and I'm excited to share.
Yes.
And I'm Dr. Mosadi Porter. I'm not a medical doctor. I always like to make sure that I give that disclaimer. I have a doctorate in education, higher education specifically. And the reason I'm here today is because of my battle with depression as well. It's been a lifelong thing, and it wasn't until last year that I was actually able to get a diagnosis and get help with that. So I'm excited about this series just because I believe that so many women, well, just people in general,
Yes.
I would say deal with this issue, and it's something that needs to be talked about, and I think that we're going to talk about it in a very transparent, a very real, and a very helpful way. Mm-hmm. So I guess for us to get started, if we're going to start with our guests, and we're just going to talk a little bit about our education, our family background, and anything else that you think would be important for the people to know to kind of frame your experience.
Okay. My education, I attended Prairie View A&M University. I was raised by my grandparents. My mom and dad were married, but they divorced at a fairly young age. I have one sister. We are 8 years apart, and I am the eldest. As it relates to family upbringing, I think that a lot of times as women, you have the image of you have it all together, or people assume you have it all together. Mm-hmm. And little do they know the underlying things that may occur in your life, be it if it's a matter of being raised by a grandparent, not having your parents around, or being a single parent raising a child, and the things that you face as it relates to trying to nurture them and hopefully avoid them from experiencing some of the things you experienced growing up. So it's always interesting to have a dialogue around that among common people that experience, and then again, sometimes we just don't want to share it because we're embarrassed or we don't want people to know.
And for me, I attended Texas A&M University and the University of Houston. I am currently a single mom of 2 teenage boys, and that can be challenging in itself, especially being a woman and never having been a teenage boy. So some of the challenges that they face, I'm not, really sure what to do with that. But they are the joy of my life. Also, just as far as family background is concerned, I like to consider myself I like to consider myself an only child with siblings. And what I mean by that is me and my sisters were not raised together. And so while we had siblings, all of us were not raised together. There were some things that, transpired in our life that did not allow our family to be raised in what you would consider the typical American, home and that kind of thing. So I know that those were some of the things that contributed to some of the battles that I had with depression and loneliness and things like that. So that's a little bit about me. Seneca?
Well, I had probably the American dream in terms of family and community. My parents have been married 50 years now. I grew up in a very loving home. They were probably the best representation of love I've ever seen in my life. All of my siblings, we have such a great connection, great camaraderie. We're always doing things together. Most of us are college educated. I went to Tuskegee University for my bachelor's. that I received in biology. I went on to Texas Southern University to receive my master's in information systems, and I'm currently pursuing my doctorate in higher education. So I didn't have any daddy issues, didn't have any mommy issues, didn't have any family issues really. My issues were born out of health challenges and some of the things that I went through with that, and just not knowing how to cope with it, and not feeling like I had anyone to turn to and anybody who understood. And you just feel like you're isolated and in this bubble by yourself, and you don't know how to reach out to get the help that you need. And so once I started talking about it, I found that talking about it was very liberating for me, because I felt like, oh wow, I'm not the only one who's going through this. There's other people who really genuinely need to hear your story and who are also healed by your transparency and your testimony.
Okay. So Seneca, when we talk about the Superwoman Syndrome, how would you describe that? Like what are the characteristics of that?
I feel like a lot of, especially Black women in our society, we take on the Superwoman Syndrome. We're trying to do so much. We're mothers, we're daughters, we're wives, we're holding on to a lot of different things. And, in my situation, I'm a motivational speaker, I'm a full-time graduate student, I'm a missionary, so I do medical and evangelistic missionaries, missions around the world. And so I just have a lot on my plate. I'm always juggling different things. And, one of the things is I tell myself that these things keep me busy and I'm happy doing these things, but sometimes they burn me out. You have to have a level of balance, and that's one of the things that I work on, because I'm always so busy, and when one thing ends, I'm already starting something else, and it's just like the cycle just continues. And if I'm not careful, I look up and I just crash and burn. It's like I don't have a yellow light, I have a red light and a green light. It's either I'm stop or go. And so I just really have to find the balance in it, and that's kind of the Superwoman Syndrome for me.
Okay. How about you, Shannan?
I probably would say sometimes I feel like you're assigned a label, not that it's something that you just really want to carry out for yourselves. And if you are, as I stated, growing up being the oldest of between me and my sister, so I was kind of always like the leader, I shouldn't even just say this related to my siblings, or my sister, just in general, not necessarily wanting to take the lead in life, but I kind of deem it as, this is what I was charged with, so you just learn to do what you have to do.
Absolutely.
And oftentimes, kind of like you mentioned, you end up taking on a whole lot more than what you anticipated doing, because people know that you're reliable, or they can depend on you. So with those things in mind, without you even saying, okay, I am the Superwoman, it's kind of like you were already labeled with the S on your chest. You're helping out, other people. And then I think also, too, when it comes to having a caring spirit, I know that that's just my nature. If it's people that especially the people that I'm closest to, but even if I'm not, my general instinct is to just help people out. So a lot of times, you can take on their issues, not that they asked you to, but you just naturally had an instinct to take that on, and then you don't realize how it's impacting you too, or having that caring heart, and you can become overwhelmed. And not because anybody has inflicted or imposed anything on you, it's just, I guess, life, things that just happen and you get overwhelmed.
And that's actually a great segue into one of the other questions that I was going to ask, which was, how has being a Superwoman affected your life? I can say personally, I look at my calendar, like just take the month of February, for example. I do not have a free weekend in the month of February, not a single one. Between home, my actual 9 to 5, or really it's not a 9 to 5, but my actual job, sorority stuff, church, and then, just always saying yes. And it's not that yes is necessarily bad, it's just knowing when to use it. That word has so much power in it, but one word that has even more power is no.
Yes.
And I think that those of us who suffer from the Superwoman Syndrome, we really have an issue with saying no. A dear friend of mine, Miss Charlotte Stalling, she always tells us, those of us who are a part of her circle, that no is a complete sentence.
That's right.
And I'm still learning that. I'm still at the no with the ellipses on the end. Like I haven't learned how to cut it off at that, that period on the end of that. And so you referenced this just a little bit, but Seneca, I'm going to ask you, what do you think are other people's perceptions of you? Like from the outside looking in as a Superwoman, what do you think their perceptions of you are?
Well, it's funny because I was talking to a young lady yesterday, and she was like, when do you sleep? when you sleep. And so people just assume like I have this, you know, lavish life. Like I'm always traveling, I'm always out of the country, I'm always on vacation, I'm always speaking, I'm always working on a project. You know, like I just have this fabulous, you know, champagne wishes and caviar dreams type of lifestyle. And it's like, no, that's not the whole story. And one of the things I tell people not to get so wrapped up in and caught up in is social media, because people only post what they want you to see.
Yes.
Oh,
right?
Totally
It's a PR firm at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So people are only, you know, I tell people all the time, most of the time I only post the happy and cheerful stuff. You don't see the pictures of me in the shower crying. You know, that's not what people want to see.
Us on the phone at 5 o'clock in the morning talking about, girl.
Exactly. That, you know, people don't want to hear that. They don't want to see that, you know. So we find ourselves just kind of covering up and showing people what we want them to see. And so I think that's what people's perception of me is a lot of times, is that I just have this overly joyous life and I don't have a bad day, and you know, I'm always joyful and happy and bright and sunny, and I, you know, I don't ever cry or anything like that, and that's just simply not the truth.
And what do you think people's perceptions of you?
I think it's probably about the same thing. And you know, the other side of it is when I was listening to her speak about what it looks like, or not necessarily even just the image that we portray. Sometimes I feel like people can think that even if you're not sharing, you know, the whole clear picture of what you're experiencing, they just assume, well, okay, compared to my life, your life has to be good. And I kind of feel like sometimes that's an unfair statement, because it's almost like we don't have hurts, we don't have low moments, or just because you don't see me crying all the time, or if I am the type of person who encourages and tries to push through, it doesn't mean that I don't have periods of, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired. I appreciate the compliments and you thinking I'm a superwoman, but guess what? I hurt just like you do. I get tired just like you do. I get overwhelmed just like the next person.
Right. And I mean, just in general, like being a motivational speaker, I mean, just the title alone, you're a motivational speaker.
Right.
So they motivate people. You're supposed to be happy.
And motivate yourself.
Exactly. It's like, keep me happy, motivate me, tell me something good. And it's like, sometimes I need my own moment to kind of relax and rejuvenate and just pour into myself. So, you know, if I'm so busy and continuing to pour into other people, then, you know, it can be depleting. It can, you know, it can really be exhausting. And so you have to find a healthy balance, because like I said, most of the time I don't get a day off. You know, people, they expect you to be happy. They expect you to be motivating. And so if you fall outside of those lines, it's kind of like, what's wrong with you today?
You don't get to have a moment.
You don't get to have that moment.
I agree.
As I was thinking about our time here together, one of the things that I was thinking is, if I could gather all the people in a room who depend on me, who ask me, you know, to do things, what would I want to tell them?
Oh, wow.
What would I want to tell them? And I think one of the things that I would want to tell them is, I don't want to be strong all the time. Like, I think the label is intended to be a good thing. You know, it's like, oh, she's so strong. She's able to, you know, just do so much. And that's great and wonderful. And I know you mean it as a compliment. But sometimes I don't want to be strong. Sometimes I want to be able to be like, you know what? I'm through. I'm done. I don't want to. And I'm not going to. But we don't always get to do that, you know, especially as a mom. You don't always get to do that, you know, as a, at least for like in my work, I'm dealing with students and families, and if I don't answer that phone call, that could mean that somebody doesn't get to go to college, or at least to A&M.
Right,
you know?
right.
If I don't fill out that form or answer that email, that could impact someone's life. And so there are times when I just, to be honest, I want to quit. You know, I want to quit, but thinking about what that means to other people, and I mean, and just my faith, I know we're all believers. There's just something about that says you can't. You know, you can't quit. And there's going to be, in one of the other segments, we'll talk a little bit deeper about what some of that has looked like for us. But, sometimes I just want to tell them, I don't feel like it.
You know, it's interesting, just listening to what you just shared, and I think this probably goes across the board for all of us, that while we say what we don't want to do, this is how we've earned the cape that people have given us. And what I mean by that is because we're reliable people. They know that they can trust us. They know that they can count on us. And these are people that you lean towards, because you know that person is going to deliver. And even if we take ourselves out of the equation and we think about people that we may trust or feel comfortable with, you have the same expectations of that person. Like, I know that if I call and share this, I don't have to worry about he or she disclosing this to someone else. I don't have to worry about this person misguiding me because I believe that they care enough about me to try to help me through this. And when you think about it, it's the same thing that people expect. And when we look at this whole cake thing and the Superwoman, I think maybe we say we don't want it, but I mean, maybe not necessarily the labeling piece of it, but it's actually just who we are. And the cape just comes along with it.
Yeah. So how much of it is self-inflicted?
I guess it depends on who you talk to, and I don't know if that's a fair statement in saying that, because for me, I'm not the type of person who wants to stand out. But I guess perceptions of others, it comes across that way. But again, the cameras aren't on all the time, so you don't know. Even if I'm smiling, I might go get in my car when I leave here and I'm in tears like, oh my God, today was a bad day and I don't feel like dealing with life, or I don't feel like being an adult today. It happens. But I wonder sometimes when you're interacting with people, and not to say that they don't think about these things, but if they realize it. Because have you guys ever had a conversation with someone and they're like, oh, you're fine. I know you can press through this, or I've seen you weather through other storms. Doesn't mean that you're incapable of doing it, but even the strongest people have weak moments at times.
Right. Yes. But I think the thing when we say we don't want it is being allowed to have those weak moments.
Exactly.
Right. Giving yourself permission to rest.
Right.
When I think about the scripture in the Bible where it says, man was not made for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath was made for man. That even if God created the world and he rested, like, that should be very clear to us that we need to take moments of rest, so that we can recharge and rejuvenate, because it's like you're no good to anybody else if you're no good to yourself.
True.
Right. If you're sick and you're not healthy, it's hard to help somebody else if you're in that condition. So we have to give ourselves permission to rest, and we have to be okay with that. And like Mosadi said, no is a complete statement, and we don't have to be apologetic about it. It's like we need to just stand very firm in that. And I know in my situation, a lot of it isn't self-inflicted. I always feel like I need to be number one, and if I get 2 A's and a B, I'm crying because I'm like, that B ain't good enough. It's just like I'm always trying to strive and do more and be more, and that's just kind of my personality. I've always been that way. So it's one of those things, like a lot of it is self-inflicted. I'm always wanting to do more and try harder and be the best at what I do, but at the same time, that does come with a price. And that can come with a serious price to your health, whether it be mental health, your physical health. You have to learn that balance. And I think with the Superwoman Syndrome is that most of us are just not finding that balance. We're self-inflicting all of these things on us, and we just need to really take some time and care for ourselves more than we're caring for others. That we should do that.
Yeah, because a lot of times we expect the perfection. Sometimes other people don't expect that from us. I know I'm my own worst critic. I'll be the one who will sit there and be like, oh, I didn't fold the laundry. Well, guess what? Y'all can't see it, but it's some laundry sitting right over there. And it's going to be there until I get around to it. But how I got to where I was is because those would be the kind of things that it's like, I'd be thinking about it all day. Like, I haven't gotten it done. And after, just the things that have happened, I'm at that place where I'm like, the world is not going to end.
Right.
The laundry does not get folded.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I'm not saying, just let everything go to hell in a handbasket. But learning that everything is not an emergency.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, it's urgent.
Yeah. I have this thing above my desk at work. And one of the quotes says that, remember that you're not the master of the universe. Like, you don't have to make everything right in the universe. And that's where the Superwoman Syndrome comes in is, we have women who want to do everything right. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience before we get ready to give them their call to action?
Let's see. I would just say, one of the things that I'm really trying to learn this year is that I have to be more sensitive and forgiving of myself and just, be more kind to myself, because I think sometimes we're our own worst critic and we put so much on us, and when we don't you know, when we don't bring things to fruition, or when we fall short, it's like we can be just so hard on ourselves, and sometimes we just need to give ourselves a break and give ourselves permission to relax and just have a moment. Like, we don't always have to wear the cape every day. It's okay if some things don't get done. It's like the world will go on.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we have something for you all. So this is your call to action. This is your opportunity to maybe take your cape off for a minute, take the S off your chest. And so over the next 2 weeks, and that's going to be the time in between this episode and our next episode, we want you to say no to something. So you're going to say no to something, and then you're going to post it to the I Said No thread on the Purpose Promoter page or on the Seneca Dunmore Incorporated page.
Yes.
Okay? So find something that is not an emergency. Don't say, I said no to feeding my kids.
Right.
But there's going to be a thread on both of our pages where it's going to say, I said no. And I want you to very proudly put on there, what is it that you said no to? What is it that you gave yourself permission to let go of, even if it was just for the day? Okay, so we look forward to seeing your posts. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to thank our special guest, Ms. Shannan Blount, for joining us today for weathering the traffic. And that's it. Until next time.